Second lesson is from 2 Corinthians 9, excuse me. In 2 Corinthians, it's always easy for me to find. It's right after 1 Corinthians. But 2 Corinthians 9, beginning at the first verse, in my red Bible, it's on page 183. As you're turning to 2 Corinthians 9, also want to invite you, if you could, to flip on the inside panel of your bulletin and turn to that, and there where the sermon notes are. And beneath the sermon notes, I had only 2 points in the sermon, so I wanted to add a bunch of other data there. But there's this, some bulleted points about CPC's code. We've had a team of people, and our session have been working and filtering through some data that we heard through stories and so on back at a fall conference we had. We've been working behind the scenes. And now we've come up with some of our DNA code. And we're going to be fine-tuning this, inviting you to be a part of that. But 4 points that kind of characterize who we are. Here's what it is. Here's what code is, or DNA. Code is not a mission or a purpose statement. Okay, that's printed below. And code is just who you are. It's just who. It's not what you want to be. It's not who you aspire to be. It's not good or bad. It just is. And there are some characteristics about us that we've kind of come to look at and have come through this process. One, we're unpretentious. We do things in a casual way. We're real. The other thing is we like to do things across generation. We're also engaged in authentic mission. And then the third bullet I have there, and that we come up, we were talking about this the last session, that we're a church, we have a Christ-centered and intelligent faith. We're Christ-centered. And you don't have to check your brains at the door when you come in here, or when you come to an adult study, or when you're engaged in a mission trip. And I think there's something to that. Now, Paul, in our lesson this morning, he encourages the Corinthians to not check their brains at the door, too. And he is helping to collect an offering for Jerusalem. The Jerusalem church was struggling, and Paul is going to pretty soon be up at Corinth, which is in Greece, and he wants them to be prepared. And so in our lesson, he's talking about that. See if you can catch in the lesson this morning where Paul resonates with the code of Christ Presbyterian Church, and then what that might mean for you. Okay? So let's turn to 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter. Now, Paul says, it is not necessary for me to write to you about the ministry to the saints. Saints would be simply for the Christians in Jerusalem. The word saint is just another word for Christian. I know you don't think of yourselves as saints, but you are. So now it's not necessary for me to write to you about the ministry of the saints, for I know your eagerness, which is the subject of my boasting about you to the people of Macedonia, saying that Achaia has been ready since last year, and your zeal has stirred up most of them. Achaia is the province that Corinth is in. So he's basically saying, hey, the Macedonians are pretty excited about you. And now he's going to say, don't let me down. Verse 3, but I am sending the brothers in order that our boasting about you may not prove to have been empty in this case, so that you may be ready, as I said you would be. Otherwise, if some Macedonians come with me and find that you are not ready, we would be humiliated, to say nothing of you, in this undertaking. He's really not trying to be threatening. He's just trying to say, be ready. Yeah, you know. So I thought it necessary to urge the brothers to go on ahead to you and arrange in advance for this bountiful gift that you have promised, so that it may be ready as a voluntary gift and not as an extortion. So the brothers are the ones that delivered this letter to the Corinthian church. The point is this: the one who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and the one who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each of you must give as you have made up your mind, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance, so that by always having enough of everything, you may share abundantly in every good work. Here ends the reading. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, did you catch where Paul is talking about using our heads? And I think as we approach May 20th, Gratitude and Commitment Sunday, we need to be listening to Paul here. It's in verse 7. In fact, I would like to pull it up on the screens here. Here it is. Each of you must give as you have made up your mind, not reluctantly or under compulsion. That is, Use your head. I like the Message translation. Let's pull that up here. Here's Eugene Peterson's translation. Take plenty of time to think it over and make up your own mind what you will give. That will protect you against sob stories and arm twisting. Let's get right to it. And I think that's so true. You want to think it over. Now, as you are thinking about whatever you do in the faith, but as we move towards, you can pull that off, Melvin. As you move towards, we move towards May 20th, thinking about giving for the fiscal year 2012-2013. There's a very important principle here. Think it over. I used to work at another church, and our bookkeeper, before she retired, was telling me a story when she was a young adult, and she was in a Midwest church. And in that church, I don't know if it was the denomination, but at that church, the pastor told everybody what their giving was going to be for the next year. Just want to let you know, if you're a guest here, we don't do that, okay? Nobody would listen to me anyway. But you have to, we don't do that. At CPC, you have to own your faith. You have to own your ethics. You have to own your giving. No arm twisting, no sob stories. We don't even really talk about our plans for this next year. And we've got some. Jeremiah was just talking about, our session. We have a proposal coming. This next week's session asked me to come with it. Some Hispanic pastors in our presbytery. We're going to be launching an Hispanic Bible study in our church at the beginning of next month. We're very excited about that. We're talking about our young adult ministry and new vision for that. And Jeremiah and I talked about maybe possibly in the future internships for college students that are thinking about ministry and so on and so on. So the dreams are out there. But that's not what we do. Why do we not do that? Because we want you to think prayerfully yourselves from the center of who you are. Make up your mind what you're giving to the ministry of Christ. This is so much a part of the DNA of who CPC is. Let me share a story that came up at our fall conference that we had that I think epitomizes this church, thinking things over. Years ago, over 20 years ago, before I was pastor here, a grandmother and her grandson stood in this room with the interim pastor, Steve Jenks. How many of you remember Steve? Some of you are here. Okay. Some of you know what I'm going to say. And Steve, the grandmother, lost her son and daughter-in-law to AIDS. They were drug users. And this grandson was born HIV positive and now had AIDS at 8 years old. They had moved down from Orange County because he had not been received very well at preschools and in the neighborhood, and they were just looking for a community that would accept this young child who had AIDS. Now this is in 1990. It's before, remember when Magic Johnson, I'm so old now, but you remember when Magic Johnson came out with HIV positive. It's like for so many of us, now we knew someone who had AIDS. But before that, the culture was so afraid of gay people. Sometimes we still are. And AIDS was just a punishment. That was to be shunned. I mean, it was a punishment in our culture. And we shunned people. And this boy, his name was Johnny Barron, he was experiencing that. And so Steve Jenks, the pastor, wanted the congregation, and he asked them, will you accept this family? And boy, we did. I never met Johnny. He died 6 weeks before I became the pastor here. But he died embraced by a church that wasn't gripped by cultural fears and was able to think through what their faith meant. That's what we do. We think it over when it comes to how we exercise our discipleship. We think it over how we're going to love our neighbors. We think it over when it comes to our assets, what God has given to us, and what we're going to give. So I want to encourage you to do this. Think it over. And then I want to say this. Think it over from your gut. From your gut. I'm going to show you a Greek word here. I've done this before, so just be patient with me. Here it is. Each of you, this is verse 7. Each of you must give as you have made up your, and here's the Greek word, this is in the Greek New Testament, this is the word Paul uses, cardio. Now, so that's the word we translate for mind. But do you recognize that word? It's our word for what? Heart. In Greek, the K is often turned to... No, is cardio, do we use C or K? We do use C, yeah, it often does, okay. What do I know? I know Greek, but I don't know English. It's our word for cardiology or cardiac and so on. So this is very good. Remember, Paul thinks like a Jew. He writes in Greek. But in the Jewish way of thinking, and I've shared this before, that the heart is not only the seat of the emotion and the will, but the heart is the place of the intellect. So what's Paul saying here when he says think it over? He's not simply saying do some cold analysis. He's saying listen to your heart. Thanks, Mary. When you get together with your spouse in the next couple of weeks, or if your children are old enough, great way to involve them in discipleship, showing them and talking with them about your financial giving. Or if you're single, as you prayerfully consider your giving and your estimate of giving for this next year. Think it over from your gut. People, our giving is from the inside out, not the other way around. No sob stories, no arm twisting to kind of force your inside to doing something that you haven't thought through. I love Psalm 103. Bless the Lord, O my soul. All that is within me. Bless God's holy name. What's inside you? Is Jesus Christ inside you? Has he found a home with you? And if he has, to give out of that grace, that mercy, that joy from that center. May 20th. We're going to make our commitments of love and grace and gratitude to God. And I want to encourage you to think it over from your gut. Amen? Amen.